Well, it's 7:15, officially on day 20 of my second Camino de Santiago. I last arrived in Ponferrada in April and took a bit of a detour for a few months before cycling around France and doing a few escapades in Spain and Morocco and France again. But here I am back on the Camino. Dawn has just broken. Ponferrada is quite a spectacle. I've had an early morning coffee. It's about 17 degrees, but forecast to get up to 38 today. So I am planning on getting most of my walking done during the morning before it becomes unbearable. About 25 kilometres today, and we'll see how I can manage the pace. Just behind me is the stunning castle of Ponferrada. Millions of pilgrims have passed this site, and these rather lazy ones down here aren't ready to start moving yet. Not sure it was a good idea, but I've already knocked 600 kilometres off. I've got 200 to go. In this heat, I think I'll have to take it a bit more slowly than I did in April when I was at a fast pace trying to keep warm. Well, today is pretty tough. I'm climbing up to Osobreiro. It's a 28 kilometre hike up about 1,000 metres, but pretty much all the climbing is in the last 8 kilometres, and I've got just 3 kilometres to go. I've tried to get to this point pretty quickly. It's now just on 12:30 p.m. So I've made good time, I think. I've passed a lot of people. Most people starting sort of 6 a.m, which is a nice idea, but it's not light in this part of Spain, thanks to General Franco, until about 7:30 in the morning, and I don't like to walk in the dark. That's a recipe for a few Mr. Magoo moments. So drenched in sweat. I haven't sweated this much in quite a while, but only about 50 minutes to go before I reach the Albergue for the night. This is just yet another lesson in why it's a dumb idea to walk places or to climb hills. And just like that, it's 1 o'clock and I've arrived at Osobreiro, and there's a pretty young lady, I think she's a young lady, to greet me here at the summit. The sign says Miguel Couto, but I think that's the artist rather than the name of the lady herself. Osobreiro, 1,300 metres. It's the third highest peak along the Camino de Santiago after Cruz del Ferro and the peak of the Pyrenees. This is the hottest day I've climbed, but it's not too hot up here. I think it's about 27 degrees. So right now I'm going to see if I can check into a hotel, have a couple of refreshing Coca-Cola beverages, and at some point try and rinse the sweat off. I think the salt content of the outer part of my skin is probably enough to cook some French banquets for several years. So today seemed to be a whole lot harder than I thought it would be coming up, but now that I'm here in retrospect, it seems quite easy. It's funny that once you've got to the top, all of the challenge and misery of getting up just disappears, and although I'm not one for views, this is not a bad one. Here I am at the Alto de San Roque, Alto do San Roque in Galician. I last met this fellow 4 years ago on a morning that was much less misty than this. I've got 31 kilometres to cover today. I've got through about 5 so far. This is the entry point from the Leon and Castile region to Galicia, which is the last stage, about 150 kilometres to go to get to Santiago. And everything changes in Galicia: the climate, the food, the language. At some point somebody will try and get me to eat pulpos, which is octopus from the sea, and therefore for me, because of a traumatic incident when I was a child, inedible. But there will be other pleasant things to eat. I quite like walking in the mist. It's refreshing. It's only about 15 degrees, but it keeps you honest and causes you to walk a little bit faster, to keep your senses about you. Somebody asked me yesterday why it was that I walked so quickly, and I told them it was because I don't like walking, and I want to get it over and done with for the day as soon as possible. They didn't quite come to terms with that excuse, but I'm going to keep using it. So this is my 5th morning back on the Camino de Santiago. Yesterday I passed through Sarria, which is 115 kilometres from Santiago de Compostela, and for most people it is the beginning of their journey, because to get your Compostela, the certificate to say that you've walked it, you only need to cover 100 kilometres, so it gets much busier from here on. I've been walking a couple of hours this morning, covered about 10 kilometres, and I'm making my way to Porto Marin for breakfast, which is just up the top of this hill. Like all great Spanish villages along the Camino, it's a cursed one, because you have to climb about 500 steps to get up to it. From this point on, because I have walked the Camino from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port over 700 kilometres ago, the newbies, the people who start their Camino for the last 100 kilometres, think of me as a rock star. And no doubt many of them will say to me, "Aren't you Hamish Price, the world's greatest living adventurer?" And of course I can't hide who I am. Well, I'm more than 800 kilometres down on the Camino de Santiago. I started in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port back on 26th of March, and with a few interludes I started again in Ponferrada 8 days ago. It's much busier than the first time I did the Camino. I'm now just 5 kilometres out, and for the first time behind me I can see Santiago. I remember the first time I walked here, for about the last 70 kilometres, I seriously doubted whether Santiago actually existed, or if it was just a myth that the Galician authorities had come up with 1,000 years ago to tempt people to walk across Spain and, hey, surprise, surprise, there's no such place, and it's only in the last 5 kilometres that you can see the end point. So I'm about an hour away, and the young people making so much noise, they're starting to get festive and restless, and will no doubt be in front of me in the queue, but mostly they didn't start as far back or as long back as I did. So the last few days have been pretty challenging. The heat, I walked from 8:30 in the morning through to 8 p.m. last night with a lot of stops. Got up to about 33, 34 degrees. Really far too hot for any civil person to be walking, but I got through it. And almost at the end. No sense of sadness, just basic sense of relief that I don't have to walk again for a while. So here I am, I've arrived in Santiago, the holiest city in Spain. It's been 800 kilometres since Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and there's even a bit of Galician pipe band playing at the moment. There's meant to be a deep sense of satisfaction, as if you've unloaded all your grief and burdens, and you've come to terms with the person that either you were before the Camino or you became subsequent to. I'm not sure that I feel that yet, which means probably I'll just have to keep walking a little bit further.